ACC101 students, in this video, I want to take a look at the four-step closing process that you all read about in Chapter 6. In this video, we are going to be looking only at Chapter 6 homework, problem number 1. So this is a screen grab from the Chapter 6 homework, problem number 1. When you open it, you're going to see the instructions. You will see the chart of accounts. You are going to see the general journal. And then at the very bottom, you will see the T accounts. So what I want to focus on first is these T accounts. So when you get to them, you're going to see that there are expenses listed under where you see lawn service fees on the screen. So for the expenses, you're going to just enter the same amount that's in the T account on the opposite side. So there should be a little blank space for you to enter those numbers there. Okay, so that's what you're going to do for that portion. But I want to focus on this part that's on the screen because it can get a little bit confusing, but I hope that once you hear it and maybe see it, it'll make a lot more sense. So let's look at this. So I'm looking at capital, drawing, income summary, and lawn service fees. Now remember, lawn service fees are this person's revenue. Okay, so the very first step in the four-step closing process is to close revenue to income summary. So you see that blue line from lawn service fees up to income summary. We're going to take that 5,000 and put it in the credit side for income summary. Okay, you can see I have a red number 1 there. So it's the very first step you're going to do. After that, number 2, well, where does that number come from? We are closing expenses to income summary. So underneath lawn service fees, you're going to have just a whole list. I think it starts at wage expenses and goes all the way to miscellaneous. So you're going to add all of those up, and whatever number you come up with is what you're going to plug in for number 2. Okay, so number 2, I have a note there on the screen. Number 2 is just the sum of all the expenses for this person. Okay, so once I have those two numbers in my income summary, I am going to subtract $5,000, right, my revenue, minus my expenses, gives me, on my screen, it's $1,950. Okay, so you're going to subtract your two numbers and get a number over on the debit side for income summary. Then step number 3, the purple line, is to close income summary to owner's capital. So I'm going to take whatever was left in my income summary and I'm going to move that up to capital. If you follow that purple line up, you see it goes to number 3. So underneath my 7,000 in capital, I've put 1,950 in the credit side. So number 4 is to close drawing to owner's capital. So that green line you see, I'm going to take my $700 from drawing and I'm going to put it over on the debit side for capital. Okay, so last step we have to do here is just a little bit of math. I'm going to take my $7,000 that you see at the top for capital. I'm going to subtract the 700 that he took out in drawing, and then I'm going to add the increase in capital that I had from the income summary. So that leaves me with $8,250. Take a look at is the chapter 6 homework problem number 1. So the same problem, but we're just looking at the general journal now. So in the previous slide, we've looked at the T accounts. Now we're looking at the general journal. So we are going to break this down, and I put numbers over on the right side so that you can see. The first 2 entries have to do with step 1 in the process. So the very first thing we did was we closed revenue to income summary. So remember, his revenue was lawn service fees. It was a debit, so that goes first. And then we closed it to our income summary, which was a credit, and so that one goes second. Now for this one, you will have to put post-reference numbers in there, and you can see them in the middle there. Those come from your chart of accounts. So if your chart of accounts tab was hidden, you might need to click on it, look for lawn service fees as revenue, and then you would type in the account number. It should be 401. All right, so then in the next section here, the next thing we did in the 4-step closing process was we closed expenses to income summary. So all of the expense amounts that we entered when we closed those accounts, they were all credit entries. Okay, so those are all going to be listed second. So you can type in income summary and leave it blank for right now, but then you can go down and do your wage expense, advertising, all the way to miscellaneous. Okay, those are all going to be credit entries like you see on my screen. So again, debits have to equal credits. So once you finish putting in all of your expense amounts, add them all up. Okay, add them up, and whatever you get goes up on the debit side for income summary on line number 4. Okay. In the next section, we have step number 3, which was close income summary to owner's capital. So my income summary was a debit entry. So I'm going to put that first. And my capital was a credit entry. So that goes second. So when I subtracted revenue minus expenses, so on my screen, $5,000 minus $3,050, I was left with $1,950. So that's where those two numbers, or that number, comes from. Okay, so I'll list the debit first, the credit second. In the last section there, number 4, we closed drawing to owner's capital. So you can see it was $700 that they had pulled out of the account. So we debited the capital account first to decrease it. And then we put the $700, close out the $700 drawing account. So capital as a debit for 700, drawing as a credit for 700. So I hope that seeing it broken down like this and maybe explaining it, hearing it, it'll help you get through your assignment a little bit easier.